Well, we're a purpose-driven organisation. Our purpose is to support others to have a positive and lasting impact. So that's really one of the first measures that we look at when we are determining, do we want to work with this company or this organisation, or do we want to work on this project? Does it align with that? So once we are able to make a clear yes or no call on that stuff there, and sometimes it's easier than others, but we find that that really helps, and we really think that once people are open to these discussions that we can have and working in this way that's very collaborative and focusing on outcomes, then you can really get the best results. And we've had opportunities to work with clients that have not worked in an agile way before, or perhaps haven't worked with a team or a business quite like Boost, and we've really seen some great results from that, to the point where the teams around that team within a business that we're working with are going, well, hey, this is working really well for them, how come we can't work like this as well? So you can see that that's sort of being socialised outside of the clients that we're having an immediate impact with, and there's almost like an osmosis where the other people around them are soaking that stuff up and seeing the value in it as well. I think there's some ingrained ways in which people work, whether that's because of how they've been socialised and things like that, or what they've been taught going through, high school and university and higher learning and things like that as well. There's a lot of opportunity that's missed in how businesses can work. It feels like most people think perhaps there's only one or two particular ways a business can be structured and value its people and the different things that it can do, and there's opportunities for us to show, well, there are some alternatives to that. Here are some pathways you can try these things, get some great results, have strong engagement with your team, with your clients, with your customers and end users and things there as well. But it feels like unless we tell the story and show examples of what we have been doing and how that's going, then we'll continue to miss those opportunities. So it's really important that we share this message.
So one experiment that we put into place, and like most of the experiments that we've tried, we heard whispers of them somewhere else before we decided to introduce them, and this one in particular came from a talk we saw Jürgen Appelo give. Jürgen Appelo is the guy behind Management 3.0. He wrote the book and travels the world talking about interesting techniques about how management can support self-organizing agile teams. One thing that they have in place is, instead of having a annual bonus scheme, they do still have a bonus scheme and a profit share for the employees, and we have a profit share that we tended to give out on an annual basis. And we thought this doesn't feel very Boost. Basically, the way we're handing out the profit, for example, once we decided to just throw down a wad of cash in the middle of the team and told them to sort it out amongst themselves, but we wanted to find a better way to disperse the profits of Boost in a way that didn't create a sense of entitlement, and helped tie people into the idea that their work is what's making Boost a successful business or a not successful business, that they're a key part of that. So we saw Jürgen Appelo give this talk. He talked about doing a dice roll. And what they do every single month is they throw a dice. Different person can throw a dice every single time. If it comes up with a 6, that means fantastic, that a 10% profit share gets divvied out throughout all the employees. If you don't roll a 6, that amount gets rolled into the next month, and you throw a 6, or you throw a dice again in the next month, and it keeps on rolling into the next month until you do roll a 6. And that just means that every single month everybody's partaking in a fun exercise to discover whether they have got this bonus dispersed out amongst the team, and they know that if Boost is successful, that profit's going to keep building up over time. And it means that they don't pre-spend it in their minds. They don't think, oh, I'm going to get this bonus in December, so I'll base my holiday around it and base what I'm going to spend on my next big TV around that. It's an unexpected thing. So it actually is a bonus as opposed to an expected amount to pay, which are your wages, basically. And it does create a sense of excitement around it. So we've been doing it for, let's say, how long?
Probably 6-7 months at least.
Yeah.
Maybe even longer than that, actually. Maybe 9 months.
Yeah,
and it builds a bit of hype. The team's really sort of engaged. We all sort of get together, and the lucky dice roller is there and has the opportunity to try and roll a 6. So we've managed to hit that once or twice, and there's been a bunch of times that we haven't, but there's definitely a feel of sort of excitement about it, but no one's walking away disappointed if we don't roll a 6.
Yeah, and an interesting thing about that experiment is when we started it, people were not behind it. People were struggling to understand why we're doing this in the first place. And the first few months, we thought, oh, should we be doing this? It's not getting the buy-in that we were hoping it would. But as with most experiments, you've got to give it a good period of time to see whether it's going to succeed or not succeed. And it has been going for long enough now that people are getting excited when we roll that dice. People understand that their performance, I guess, there directly relates to whether we're going to be getting a profit share or not. And it's dispersed evenly around every single person in the organization, so I don't get more than anybody else. You don't get more than anybody else, at least not that you've told me yet. But it is creating that excitement and becoming that monthly ritual that we're hoping it would become. And again, so it's not just a bonus that we give out on an annual basis. It is the success of the business. It's reliant on everybody at Boost. And we want people to feel that they're not just an employee, they are part of our culture and part of our organization. This is just one thing that we're trying to make them feel that way and feel it in a very real way.
Yeah, it's good. So another experiment we've been trying is around exploring how we can sort of revamp or change our personal and professional development here. It's largely been led by the individuals to this point in time. But we decided, as this was one of the areas that there was a little bit of a few questions about and things like that as well, just trying to make sure that the team was getting the most out of this as well. Some people craved a bit more sort of input and influence in what was there, and different people like to learn and develop in different ways. Some people prefer the individual-led approach. Other people prefer something that is led or facilitated by someone else, whether that's in a group setting or a one-to-one setting, and things there as well. So we surveyed the team and got some data and some opinions about what was working and what wasn't, what changes they'd be craving, and we're sort of going through the process of looking at those results and thinking about what can we do in this space to make sure that people know there is a path of progression both professionally and personally, how they can improve the different skills that they have, whether those are technical skills or soft skills, and make sure that they can continue to improve, because that's the culture that we have here. It's about continuous improvement, looking back at what you're doing and how you're doing it, and where are the sort of tweaks and changes that we can make in order to get better results.
The promise of Agile has been touted quite a lot, and there's a lot of organizations which are moving to work in an agile way, but I think part of the problem is that agile is the goal for them. They're aiming to be a more agile organization as opposed to just aiming to work in a better way. And I think some of the key principles and values around agile are being forgotten, if not ignored altogether. So yes, there's great practices that you can use to work in an agile way, but it is about the deeper mindset, the values and the principles. In fact, that's really all it is. So it's all well and good taking on some agile practices and running the Scrum framework, if Scrum is the way that you've decided to go. But if you don't look deeper at those principles, you're not going to see the great benefits that you should do. And I think why people do avoid looking at the deeper mindset, such as the values and principles, it's because it's harder to implement. It's quite easy to make sure people are at the same time every single morning to have a 15-minute stand-up. That's a pretty basic thing to put in place. And you'll see some benefits from that, but it's a lot harder to actually, just to paraphrase one of the agile principles, it's a lot harder to create an environment where motivated individuals can do the best work that they possibly can and to trust them to get the job done. Because that's not the way a lot of organizations have been set up. That word trust is something that's lacking in a lot of organizations. The very idea of self-organizing teams can be a little bit scary for some organizations because they have a certain way of running projects. They have a certain expectations of project teams. They have a certain hierarchy, so they might have a project board and a project manager and a team, and the team ultimately just does what they're told to do and delivers by a certain time of day. So getting out of people's way and giving actual real autonomy to the teams is a very tricky thing to do. And I think that Agile has not seen the success that you might like to see because organizations have implemented it but haven't changed at its core, haven't changed. So you have Agile teams, probably Agile teams, working within more traditional waterfall organizations. And I think that's quite problematic. Obviously, the larger an organization is, the harder it is to change some of the more systemic ways that you work. We're relatively fortunate that we're a small organization, so we could change, but it still took us a long time to get it right. So it's not tricky, and maybe given a bit more time, people will start to realize that the mindset is actually the trickiest part to change. The culture is the trickiest part to change, but also by far the most impactful thing to change. But I think Boost went through some hard times, and there's nothing like going through a bit of pain to reevaluate what you're actually doing. And the book that started it all, it was a book. We've mentioned books a few times. There was a book that inspired Nathan originally. It was that Ricardo Semler book, Maverick, and that showed him that there was a different way to run an organization, and it alleviated some of the pain points that we saw from how Boost was run originally. And he was very much a control enthusiast. He was a perfectionist. He had very high standards, and I think it's fair to expect high standards, but he would be a little bit command and control about how some of the standards would actually get implemented. And once he read this book and started going through some training with people who are trying to work in a different way, and he did travel the world, going to different courses, going to different seminars. He had some online coaching with some world-renowned people who are working in a very different way. And eventually you could see him struggling with letting control going, letting go of control as to how everything was done at Boost. The days of micromanaging were gone. He literally moved out of the city. He moved out to Queenstown, so he's only here a couple of days. And just made sure that he got the right people on board, so people who he could trust to do the best job, and trust to do the best job without always checking in. And while we're going through that process, I could occasionally see him struggle with holding back. If there's something happening that he didn't necessarily agree with, you could absolutely see him struggle with that. But hats off to him. He would let you make that decision on your own. And I could also see us struggling with it. Gone were the days where we'd have to run everything by Nathan and just get things okayed by him. That was something that we got quite used to. It was a bit of a comfort blanket in many ways. Now we made the decisions ourselves, which was quite frankly terrifying for a period of time. But now I wouldn't have it any other way, because I think we make better decisions as a result, because it's not just one person being the gate for each of those should we or shouldn't we. It's more of a team idea. A lot of it comes out of conversations that we have, but we don't have to get the final say from one person at the gate.
Talk about why you think that this way of working will help organizations in the future actually do better, considering kind of the speed of change and the need for being able to learn these new skills about being responsive.
I really think it's powerful letting the people that are closest to the action be involved and even help make the decisions, provided they have the right information to do so, of course. I think that's a really powerful way to help people be engaged, but also to share their ideas and thoughts and feedback and things like that with other members of the business, perhaps people that are a bit protracted and away from the sort of coalface of things. So I think being able to give people some of that autonomy and those skills that are required to both give and receive feedback without taking it personally and things like that as well, understanding that you're all trying to row in the same direction, you're all heading for the same goal, and looking at what are the ways that we're going to get there, what does that look like.
So, I mean, a lot of people do ask us about this stuff, and we recently went to a conference where there was other organizations who tried to work in different ways. And one common question that they all get asked as well is, how does this actually affect the bottom line? Why should I do this? Is it going to be financially beneficial? And I think that's a hard one to answer, because it's hard to define metrics around that. And I can only speak from our own experience as an organization. So Boost has been around for 18 years and has ups and downs, like most organizations do. But I do know once we made a concerted effort in really defining our purpose and making sure that our clients align with that purpose, making sure that everybody here understands what that purpose is, and helping them know how they actually contribute towards that and how they can align to our values, or how they do align to our values. And once we put a large push behind that, which was, I think, probably in the most actionable way 2 to 3 years ago, Boost has been in a better place financially by quite a long shot than it has been in 18 years. And I don't think that's a coincidence that there's just more work around. In fact, in many ways, there's more competition and it's harder to find work. But we are able to pick and choose the clients that we want to work with now. And if they don't align to our purpose, that's somebody we just won't work with that particular client.
That's sort of the first qualifying factor that we look at. Does it align with our purpose? You know, and if the answer is no, then the answer is no, and we can get that sort of conversation underway pretty quickly. So, and we've seen big benefit from it as well, obviously, with the teams being able to understand the projects that we're taking on and how they align with our purpose. The team members are more engaged, and they're really buying into these projects and these pieces of work, and the clients and the teams that we're working with, and we're seeing them really put in great effort and getting great results. And I mean, that obviously impacts the business in a huge way when you're delivering really successful outcomes for clients. They're happy to sing your praises, they come back for more. So, you know, it's not sort of a case of one and done projects. We're getting repeat business and things out of this as well. And I'd chalk that up definitely to our sort of purpose-driven approach that we have there, and the levels of engagement that we have with our teams that are doing the work.
I think now all our projects are profitable, which is relatively rare for a software vendor in many ways, and that's because we choose clients who are willing to work in a truly agile way. But the fact that every project is profitable, I do put down to exactly that. We do apply a lot of rigor and discipline to running projects in an agile way here, but also making sure that there's the culture in place that helps to support agile teams.